This morning, his dreadlocks got him suspended from school. Now they could change Texas law. In Houston, state legislators vow to do something, and one of them is in studio this morning. Confusion as we close in on Super Tuesday in Texas. Will the state distribute Democratic delegates that night? We'll ask the party in Austin about what it expects to happen. Every time you buy something online, Texas collects sales tax, but there is a quiet debate underway over which city should get that money. We'll tell you why you should care. And Michael Bloomberg doubling down on Texas. We'll look at what he's doing right and maybe wrong in this state.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
And good morning. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We are thrilled that starting today, Inside Texas Politics can be seen in Texas cities across the state, from Austin to Corpus and Tyler to San Angelo. But before we sit down with our first guest, let's first get you caught up on what's happening in Texas politics. Texans in Congress, they led the effort to condemn House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Republican Kay Granger here from Fort Worth said that she thought it was insulting that the speaker ripped up a copy of the president's State of the Union address. Congressman Louis Gohmert, Bill Flores, and John Carter, among others, signed on the condemnation, but that resolution did fail. They don't agree on much, but Houston Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and President Trump both think that Texas should finally recognize when Texas slaves learned they were free. The president signed a bill that Lee backed to create an emancipation trail from Galveston up to Houston. There's only one other such trail in the country. It's in Selma, Alabama. And El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar had a big moment for a freshman member last week. She delivered part of the Democratic response to the State of the Union address. This is the second high-profile role for a Texas Latina in Congress. Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, a Democrat from Houston, was one of the impeachment managers who presented the case in the Senate. The school suspended him over his dreadlocks. Surely by now you've heard about DeAndre Arnold in Houston. His story made national news. The 18-year-old even got an invitation to the Academy Awards tonight. And now those dreadlocks could change state law. State Representative Rhetta Bowers is among more than a dozen Democrats and a Republican who are disturbed by this case. Bowers represents District 113 in the Texas House. It's the eastern portion of Dallas County, and she is in studio this morning. And joining the questioning, as always, is Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Bud, thanks for being here.
Good morning, Jason.
Representative, good to see you.
Thank you. Great to see you all again. Thanks for having us out to talk about this issue.
Absolutely. This happened in the Houston area. You represent Dallas. Why are you getting involved in this?
Well, you know, we were finding that, one, I'd like to take a step back. We were approached last year by representatives from the Crown Coalition out of Washington.
And tell people what the Crown Coalition is, because this leads to the legislation you're talking about introducing next time, called the Crown Act.
Crown Act, absolutely. The Crown Coalition, that acronym stands for Creating a Respectful and an Open World for Natural Hair. Okay. And it is legislation that works, it's an anti-discrimination legislation that wants to get away and protect natural hair textures and protective styles in the workplace and in school systems.
California considered this. New York passed it. What would a Texas bill look like?
The language wouldn't change much at all. I do believe that when looking at it with Senate Bill 188 out of California, and it really will protect children and black men, women, and children in the workplace.
Tell me how so, Representative. What protections does it put in?
It puts in place not being discriminated based on wearing braids, wearing on protective hairstyles, being able to wear your natural hair in the workplace and in the school systems, that you wouldn't feel discriminated against. And one thing about the bill, and that came clear at the press conference on yesterday, in Houston, was that you should be able to rock your crown in any way you wish, and that it is truly about diversity and inclusion.
Well, Representative, it is about diversity and inclusion. The school boards, particularly in rural Texas, don't have diversity or inclusion on the school boards. Mm-hmm. If you want to pass a bill, why not pass a bill requiring single-member districts in all these school districts where it'd be feasible, so you get real representation for minority communities.
I want to say, I thank you for that, but I want to add to that, some of the local municipalities and counties are stepping up to the plate and looking at the policy. I think, Jason, you mentioned that California, New York, and New Jersey have already, but Maryland, Montgomery County, Maryland, and some of the other counties are doing just that. You know, they're looking at it more on a local level.
But these hair rules have always been local. Things won't change till you change local school boards.
That's absolutely right, and I think that speaks to the diversity and that we need on those school boards.
Representative, some people will be watching this morning and saying, hey, can't this student follow rules? Rules exist for a reason. What do you say to that?
I do believe that, I think that speaks to the part about when you look at DeAndre Arnold, his hair didn't grow overnight. He had been a rule-following student. He's at a 3.4 grade point average. He was a star athlete. He is a star athlete. And to come up with a somewhat change in policy at the last minute as he seeks graduation. He seeks to walk with his graduating class. I just feel that he needs to be applauded in his accomplishments, not suppressed in any way. He needs to be, he's at a point in his life when we should elevate him to celebrate his achievements and get him ready for college. One thing that my sister and I talked about last night as I arrived back in Dallas was that right now, with the high cost of college and tuition, he should be looking at scholarships. Not only that one scholarship he received from Ellen, but he should be able to be doing some hardcore research and trying to get scholarships for school next semester.
Representative, what is the latest with his case to your knowledge? Is he going to be able to walk and graduate?
They're in a window right now, the school board, of having to see what they're going to do. It was brought to my attention that they don't want to be on the wrong side of history, but he's in a wait pattern. His family has taken him out of the school, right, moved him to another school, but there's also another case of his cousin, Caden, creeping up behind him that he's having some issues with hair.
And just to be sure parents understand, and I've written about this topic for 48 years now, but will this allow all boys to grow their hair over their collar?
It is not about length of hair. I think that the Crown Act, and for clarification, deals with hair texture and protective styles. So this is why it lends itself more to discrimination, I think. So I hope that answers your question, because I brought that up prior to the press conference yesterday.
Well, DeAndre has dreadlocks, but they're also long. They go below his collar. So would he be impacted by this? Would he have to cut his hair, I guess the question is?
That is what they're asking him to do.
That's the rule in Barbers Hill. You can't grow your hair over your collar.
But under the Crown Act, if this was passed, you said it's not about the length of hair.
Because I brought that up. Is it about the length of hair? Because we've had that in one of our ISDs, you know, where length of hair and beyond the shoulders was an issue. So the Crown Act more so deals with texture and protective styles.
And then the last thing in the final moments here, Representative, is the Crown Act likely to affect boys or girls more?
That's a really good question. I think the Crown Act definitely lends itself to women, men, and children.
Everybody?
Yes, and it's across the board, because black women have had this issue for a long time. I think the other thing I mentioned yesterday, if you will allow me, is that these conversations are just becoming public now, and so we're seeing more and more of them. But they're conversations that have been had in beauty salons and barbershops around the kitchen table for years.
For years to come. State Rep Rhetta Bowers, good to see you, and good luck on the legislation.
Thank you so very much.
Every time you buy something online, Texas collects sales tax. But there's a quiet debate underway over which city should get that money. There's also talk of changing state law, which could impact anyone who sells online. So why should you care about this, where your tax dollars actually end up? Well, let's ask Ross Ramsey, the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well. Tell us what this is all about.
So the easiest way to explain this is to use an example. If you buy a refrigerator online from Best Buy, for example, the sales taxes for the state go to the state, but the sales taxes for the local purchase, regardless of where you pick it up or get it delivered, go to San Marcos, because that's where Home Depot's internet sales office is located. The comptroller's new rule says that maybe those sales should go to where you are instead of to where Best Buy is.
And no doubt the cities will be fighting over that. Let's talk about Joe Biden. He did poorly in Iowa despite that last-minute push. Mike Bloomberg clearly sees an opening as the moderate candidate. He's opening more Texas offices and spending more on ads. But, you know, Biden's still polling high here. What does Bloomberg see that we don't?
Well, I think Bloomberg's trying to take advantage of any stumbles Biden might have. He's hoping there'll be another one after Iowa, maybe in New Hampshire. Maybe Biden gets a leg up in South Carolina. Maybe Nevada doesn't go his way. Bloomberg's just biding his time, trying to get himself popular enough to be in the race, to be one of the last two when it comes down to it. And Biden's just today's target.
Just Biden that time. All right, Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson ran and won on, among other things, saying the city would make decisions using data. But our next contributor argues that data might not be boding well for people of color in this North Texas city. Here's Sydney Walker from Coffee and Politics 101 with My Voice, My Opinion.
Data-driven results is the new buzz phrase these days, from school districts creating curriculums to police departments fighting crime. DPD is using data-driven policing to fight violent and property crimes. Poverty could be considered a predictor of arrest and homicide rates, and data already shows us who's poor in Dallas, so it looks like more lockups for people of color, especially black folks. Instead of getting to the root cause of trauma-related experiences, poverty, and lack of upward mobility, we're going back to the past, using the same crime-fighting strategies, only with a new name. Where is Black Lives Matter, or All Lives Matter? This is death by socioeconomic status, and no one is batting an eye. I'm Sydney Walker, and this is My Voice, My Opinion.
Coming up, confusion as we close in on Super Tuesday. Are we going to see another Iowa debacle play out here in Texas? It's not clear what will happen with the Democratic delegates on election night here. And she placed third in Iowa. What does a win look like for Elizabeth Warren in New Hampshire on Tuesday? Flashpoint debates that coming up next. You're watching Inside Texas Politics.
While we're criticizing people's clothes, let's take a look at some of Don Jr.'s outfits. There's his big polo shirt here. He just came by from the North Face store, I guess. Looking sharp with the old man in that white collared shirt and big pants. And here we have the dumbest crayon in the box.
Here we are almost a week later, and we still don't really know who won Iowa. Doesn't even matter anymore. As we close in on the New Hampshire primary, you'll want to listen to our latest episode of our political podcast called Y'all-itics. We pour a pint and pick the brain of one of the brightest young political minds out there. Search for Y'all-itics or WFAA wherever you get your podcasts. There's also some confusion as we close in on Super Tuesday. Democrats said that delegates would not be distributed on election night. And then the Secretary of State has come out and said they would be. Are we going to see another Iowa play out here in Texas? In Austin this morning is Cliff Walker. He is the Deputy Executive Director for the Texas Democratic Party. Cliff, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So is the Democratic Party in Texas clear about what is actually going to happen as far as delegates are concerned on Super Tuesday night?
What I do want to stress is that since Texas is, as we know, the biggest battleground state in the country, we know that all eyes are going to be on Texas. We have the second largest delegate prize up for grabs on Super Tuesday, and it's critical that, one, every vote counts at the absolute maximum, that we want every single vote to have the maximum impact. And we also want to make sure that the public's right to know is protected. So we will ensure that that is done in a timely fashion.
Cliff, most people watch for the vote totals on any election night, but give people an idea why campaigns need to know the delegate count so quickly.
Absolutely. Every single presidential campaign is fighting for every single delegate. And, you know, just as I mentioned, we've got so many delegates here in Texas that it makes us a very attractive prize. It's really exciting that the road to the presidency is going to come through Texas. We've got so much opportunity up and down the ballot, but at the presidential level, we need that attention. We will get that attention, and Texas voters will be courted unlike ever before.
And is the party clear on what is actually going to happen? Has the Secretary of State's office offered any clarity?
Well, the Secretary of State has reversed course based on conversations that they had in late January, where they said that they might not have reports done by state Senate district, which is how delegates are allocated, a portion of the delegates are allocated. They are still communicating how they're going to make that happen. But we as the Texas Democratic Party are going to do what we need to do on our part to make sure that those votes are tabulated and that those votes are communicated correctly, those counts are communicated correctly.
Cliff, do you think we'll actually get the delegate count that night? Will the campaigns leave Texas with a delegate count?
We are pushing on the Secretary of State right now. There's been, again, considerable back and forth and messages conveyed to us, again, in late January. It was uncertain as to whether or not that was going to happen. Now the Secretary of State, thanks to our pressure, has come out and said, yes, we are going to release that information. We're looking for them to tighten up that language a little bit to make sure that when that information is released, it's not 3 days later or whenever it's on election night, but we will ensure that that information gets out there some way.
Okay, and of course the campaigns obviously want this information, want to know the delegate count as they try to stack up their delegates and find out who's getting closer to the actual nomination. Cliff, good to talk to you from the Texas Democratic Party, and good luck to you on Super Tuesday. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
48 hours from now, from the New Hampshire primary now, and Bernie and Buttigieg have the momentum, but how viable is Elizabeth Warren moving forward? Well, that sparked our debate in Flashpoint this morning. From the right, Wade Emmert, the former chairman of the Dallas County Republican Party, and from the left is Rich Hancock from virtualnewscenter.com.
Thank you, Jason, and happy Sunday morning to all of you. Well, the Iowa caucus is in the books, and despite some hiccups, now the candidates are heading to New Hampshire. Rich, does the outcome of the Iowa caucus, and particularly kind of Elizabeth Warren not making it in first or second place, change? What does that mean for women voters in the upcoming primary? And are y'all going to nominate someone that's so far left they don't have a chance to win in the general?
Well, two-part question, the first part of which is I certainly hope we don't nominate, in fact, Bernie Sanders. Let me be clear about this. Bernie Sanders is the George McGovern of 2020. By that I mean Nixon wanted to run against McGovern. Trump wants to run against Bernie Sanders. Elizabeth Warren, while on the left on a lot of things, is still centrist in a lot of ways and fiscally very responsible. She's got a plan for what she wants to do. I hope either Elizabeth Warren or Amy Klobuchar rises in the polls, but Pete Buttigieg is looking good as well, and he's more centrist than any of them.
You are not
former military.
You are not going to. Yeah, Pete Buttigieg is more moderate, but you are not going to convince me that Elizabeth Warren is a centrist. There is no way in this earth. She may not be quite as far radical to the left as Bernie Sanders, but she is anything but centrist, and Donald Trump would win against either Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders.
Elizabeth Warren was born an Oklahoma Republican. Elizabeth Warren is the creator of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was so centrist that it passed.
She also thinks she's part American Indian and Native American Indian.
And that affects her ideology how?
It shows that she will become whatever she thinks she needs to become to get the nomination or to get elected. She is no more a Republican or centrist than Bernie Sanders.
She'll do whatever it takes. You just described every politician in history. From the left, I'm Rich Hancock.
From the right, Wade Emmert.
A tough week for Democrats and a somewhat superb one for Republicans. We'll look at what it all means for Super Tuesday in Texas. Coming up next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley on WFAA.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross and Bud are back, and joining us each week is Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Ross, let's start with you. And it's been kind of a tough week, a tough couple of weeks for Democrats with what happened in Fort Bend County we talked about last week, and then what happened with the counting fiasco in Iowa. What's the mood of Texas Democrats right now as we close in on Super Tuesday?
Well, I think Fort Bend taught them not to spike the ball before they're in the end zone, and Iowa taught them, to find the end zone. They're looking at a Texas primary in just a minute. They're hoping that the counts go well and that they don't have any mistakes here, but they're kind of on high alert. They don't want any more fumbles.
2 lessons learned, Bud.
Jason, the Democrats have been humiliated the last couple of weeks, and one of the big news stories nationwide has been that Beto O'Rourke didn't really work out as an endorser, as a door-to-door, Fort Bend County help. Really, they don't have a star. They don't have anybody leading their party right now. They don't have energy, and here they've got a primary that's going to be divided all over the board.
Well, what do you think is going to happen on Super Tuesday, Bernadine? And what does this mean for November a little later on?
Well, you know what? Let's go back to Super Tuesday, because I think the Democrats at this point are not really sure whether or not they're going to have all of their numbers on primary night. Because keep in mind, the Republican-controlled Secretary of State initially said that they would not. Then overnight, they're saying they will. So I think they have just as much of a concern going into the primary. And now November, that's enough time. Once they get their nominee, they're going to have enough time to get their ducks in a row.
And Ross, let me jump back to the Democratic issue real quick. How big of a deal is that for these candidates who want to keep stacking their delegates and move on to the next contest? How big of a deal is it for Texas not to be able to deliver these delegate count?
They're going to get the counties to report to the Texas Secretary of State how each Senate district went. That's one of the ways that they determine who the candidates are. Everybody's got their fingers crossed that that'll all fall and that we won't have a long count in Texas.
Hopefully it won't be a long night here. We talked about Democrats, Bud, but Republicans clearly, with the president being acquitted in his impeachment trial in Washington, it's been a good week for Republicans.
Yeah, Republicans are energized now. And the real notable thing about Iowa was the heavy Republican turnout and the weak Democratic turnout. It was a middling turnout. It wasn't anything like 2008. Republicans came out strong. Republicans want to come out and all vote to acquit the president. It's like they all want to go to the polls whether he has an opponent or not. They're energized.
Bernadine, final word this morning.
They were energized before the actual vote went down, but they are energized. I'll give them that. And we'll just see what goes forward. We'll
see what goes forward indeed. We're 3 weeks out. Guys, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching as well. We'll be back again next Sunday for Inside Texas Politics. Hope to see you then. Have a good day.